In 1804, a 20-year-old German pharmacist's assistant isolated the first pure drug compound ever extracted from a plant, then tested it on himself and 3 teenage boys in a dose that nearly killed all 4 of them. He named it after the Greek god of dreams. It would go on to become both one of medicine's most essential tools and one of the most dangerous substances ever discovered. Morphine remains the gold standard drug the World Health Organization recommends for severe pain today, used daily in hospitals and hospice care around the world. It sits on the same list of essential medicines as antibiotics and vaccines, and inside the same decade's opioid crisis headlines. A drug medicine cannot fully do without and cannot fully control either. Few substances in medical history have been simultaneously this necessary and this dangerous. Long before morphine existed, humans were already using the plant it comes from. The opium poppy was cultivated in Mesopotamia as early as 3400 BCE, where Sumerian tablets referred to it as the joy plant. Opium moved along early trade, routes connecting the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and Asia for centuries, becoming one of the most widely traded medicinal substances in the ancient and medieval world long before anyone in a laboratory understood its chemistry. Ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Roman physicians all used raw opium for pain and sleep. By the 16th century, the Swiss physician Paracelsus had created laudanum, a tincture of opium dissolved in alcohol, which became one of the most widely used medicines in Europe for the next 300 years, prescribed for everything from pain to insomnia to grief. The Ebers Papyrus, an Egyptian medical text dating to around 1550 BCE, includes what many historians consider one of the earliest written references to using opium as a remedy prescribed to stop children's excessive crying, a use unsettlingly similar to practices that would persist for thousands of years afterward. For thousands of years, opium was used as a whole, unpredictable substance, with no way to measure an exact dose. That unpredictability was genuinely dangerous. 2 batches of opium from different harvests could vary enormously in strength, and physicians had no reliable way to know how much of the active ingredient a patient was actually receiving. By the 19th century, opium and laudanum were sold openly over the counter with no prescription required in products marketed for adults and children alike. Commercial preparations like Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup were sold specifically to calm teething infants, containing enough morphine that infant deaths from overdose were a documented, if underreported, risk. There was, at the time, essentially no regulatory boundary between a helpful medicine and a dangerous one. The scale of the opium trade also reshaped global politics. In the 19th century, the British East India Company exported massive quantities of opium into China, and when Chinese authorities tried to ban the trade to curb widespread addiction, Britain went to war to protect it. The First Opium War, from 1839 to 1842, ended in a decisive British victory and forced China to accept continued opium imports. A conflict fought directly over access to the same plant Sertürner had only just begun to understand chemically. In 1804, a young German pharmacist's assistant named Friedrich Sertürner changed that. Working largely alone, he successfully isolated a single pure compound from raw opium, the first time anyone had ever extracted one specific active chemical from a plant. He named it morphine after Morpheus, the Greek god of dreams. To test it, Sertürner did something extraordinarily reckless. He dosed himself and 3 teenage volunteers with it directly. All 4 experienced vomiting, stupor, and dangerously slowed breathing, a warning sign of exactly the respiratory depression that still makes morphine overdoses lethal today, and only quick use of vomiting agents likely saved their lives. Despite the terrifying experiment, Sertürner had proven something enormous: that a plant's effects could come down to one measurable, isolatable chemical. It was the birth of modern pharmacology. Sertürner's discovery was initially met with indifference. He published his findings in a relatively obscure journal, and it took roughly a decade before the wider scientific community, particularly in France, recognized the significance of what he had done. He eventually received formal honors, including a prize from the French Academy of Sciences in 1831, but he died in 1841 having never been especially wealthy, or celebrated for a discovery that would go on to reshape medicine permanently. The next transformation came from an unrelated invention. In 1853, Scottish physician Alexander Wood developed a practical hypodermic syringe, allowing morphine to be injected directly into the bloodstream rather than swallowed. Injected morphine acted faster and more powerfully than anything before it, and unknowingly, doctors had also just created a far more addictive way to deliver the drug. Over the following decades, especially during the American Civil War and the Franco-Prussian War, morphine was used on a massive scale to treat wounded soldiers, and a significant number of veterans returned home with a dependency doctors did not yet fully understand. In 1898, the German company Bayer began marketing a new compound, diacetylmorphine, under the brand name Heroin, promoting it as a safer, non-addictive alternative to morphine, including as a treatment for morphine addiction itself. It was, in reality, more addictive than morphine, not less, and the marketing campaign became one of the most consequential misjudgments in pharmaceutical history. It took until 1914, with the United States' Harrison Narcotics Tax Act, for opiates to face serious federal regulation for the first time, formally separating medical use from open commercial sale. It would take more than a century to understand why morphine worked at all. In 1973, researchers Candace Pert and Solomon Snyder identified specific opioid receptor sites in the brain and nervous system, using a radioactively labeled opioid to literally track where in the body the drug was binding, a technique that helped launch the modern field of neuropharmacology. 2 years later, in 1975, John Hughes and Hans Kosterlitz discovered that the human body naturally produces its own morphine-like molecules, called endorphins. Morphine, it turned out, works because it fits into receptors the body already uses for its own internal pain relief system. Morphine and the body's own endorphins both work by binding to the same set of opioid receptors, primarily named mu, delta, and kappa receptors, each producing slightly different effects on pain, mood, and breathing, which is part of why the same drug that relieves pain can also slow breathing enough to be fatal in overdose. That discovery also explained why the drug is so easy to become dependent on. It is hijacking a system the brain relies on for its own natural reward and pain regulation. The scale of morphine's footprint runs in both directions at once. It remains one of the most prescribed painkillers in palliative and cancer care worldwide. At the same time, opioid-related overdose deaths, spanning morphine, heroin, and later synthetic opioids, have become one of the leading causes of preventable death in several countries over the past 2 decades, according to public health data from the CDC. A crisis that traces its roots directly back to the drug Sertürner first isolated in 1804. The United States alone has recorded well over 500,000 opioid overdose deaths since the late 1990s, according to CDC data spanning that period, a toll larger than the population of many mid-sized American cities. Modern medicine now treats morphine with a level of caution that took 2 centuries to develop: precise dosing, regulated prescribing, and a much deeper understanding of addiction as a medical condition rather than a moral failing. Hospice and palliative care programs today are built around careful, individualized dosing protocols designed to maximize comfort while minimizing risk, an approach that would have been unimaginable to 19th century physicians handing out unmeasured laudanum over the counter. The modern hospice movement itself, pioneered by British physician Cicely Saunders starting in the 1960s, was built partly around the principle that terminally ill patients deserved consistent, adequately dosed pain relief, including morphine, free from the moral hesitation that had shaped so much of the drug's earlier regulation. Paradoxically, in some countries, the same fear of addiction that fuels strict regulation has made legitimate morphine access difficult even for terminal cancer patients, a gap the World Health Organization has specifically identified as a global pain relief crisis in its own right. Put the 2 eras side by side. Before, a family caring for a dying relative in the 1800s had little more than whatever dose of laudanum a local pharmacist happened to mix, with no team, no protocol, and no real understanding of tolerance or addiction risk, only trial and hope. A wounded soldier receiving repeated morphine injections during the Civil War had a real chance of leaving the hospital both cured of his injury and dependent on the drug that treated it, with almost no medical understanding of what was happening to him. After, a hospice patient today receives a precisely measured morphine dose, calculated to their body weight and monitored by a care team trained specifically in pain management and addiction risk, within a regulatory system built from 2 centuries of hard lessons about exactly this drug. That same family today works alongside a team that knows exactly how the drug interacts with the body, adjusting doses in real time based on decades of published clinical research, the difference between guessing and genuinely knowing. Before, physicians often withheld adequate pain medication even from the dying, fearing addiction more than they valued comfort, an attitude that persisted well into the 20th century. After, palliative care is now recognized by the World Health Organization as a basic component of universal health coverage, with morphine access treated as a measurable indicator of a country's healthcare quality. The chemical is identical to the one Sertürner isolated in 1804. Almost everything about how carefully it is measured, tracked, and understood is not. None of that history is fully behind us. Opioid medications derived from or related to morphine remain at the center of ongoing public health crises today, and the line between necessary pain relief and dangerous dependency is still, in practice, a difficult one to walk. Sertürner set out to answer a simple chemistry question. What exactly is inside a plant that has eased and endangered humans for thousands of years? The honest answer turned out to be more complicated than any one discovery could resolve. A molecule powerful enough to end suffering, and powerful enough to cause it, depending entirely on how carefully humanity chooses to handle it. That tension between relief and risk built into the exact same molecule has never fully resolved and probably never will.